And then there were 4. That's how many teams made it to Week 12. Tonight's show starts with a pair of MVL teams and ends with a preview of the remaining Hocking powers, sandwiched between the meat of the show, stories and analysis. A healthy serving of Gridiron Glory starts right now. Well, hello again, Gridiron fans, and thank you for joining us for the final 30-minute episode of this season. I'm your host, Blake Baker, and beside me, as always, co-host Noah Wolf. This late in the season, and there's still a lot to get to tonight.
Yeah, that's true, Blake. We've got 2 games tonight, another 2 happening tomorrow evening, but this show is still jam-packed. Yeah. Film breakdowns, player features, a blast from the past, just to name a few things for you guys to look forward to.
But we know what you all came to see, and that's the highlights, so we're going to get right into those. Only 2 MVL teams remain in the playoff race. One of the 2 is the Sheridan Generals, and tonight they played Granville. MVL reporter Rebecca Markovitz tells us how these teams matched up.
Granville and Sheridan could not be any closer in competition, ranked 7th and 8th respectively in Division III, and both having only lost 1 game all season set the stage for what most thought would be a nail-biter. Colin Hill leads his team out of the locker room with bad intentions, and the rest of Sheridan's defense had those intentions too. Granville's first offensive drive, they faced 3 and 1, but a swarm of general defenders prevent Cameron Crouch from getting the first down. And it was just too good for Jacob Morgan not to dap up Cole Casto. Sheridan gets the ball, and 13 plays later, Isaiah Austin absolutely plows through the defense and sneaks into the corner of the end zone. It's 7-0. Granville tries to strike back, but they lose a couple of yards as Nick Rinaldi makes the tackle. Middle of the second quarter, Heller fakes the handoff, and he takes the ball himself, and he slides just 2 yards short of the end zone. The next play, Isaiah Austin scores his 2nd touchdown of the night, so it's 14-0, and he's just so happy he's got happy feet. Sheridan's defense consistently shut down the Aces. With about a minute left in the first half, Chance King forces Crouch out of the pocket, and Shea Taylor gets the interception, runs it for about 25 yards, and overall Sheridan gets the upset 22-7.
Yeah, they came to this one as the underdog, but for Sheridan it looked like this game was theirs to lose from the start.
Well, actually, it was Sheridan's game to win from the start, and that was evident after the first half. They had much longer offensive drives than Granville. Sheridan spent more than half of the first half on offense. They averaged about 9 plays a drive, while Granville only averaged around 6 plays a drive in the first half. We saw Ethan Heller's athleticism and mobility as usual tonight, and the Blue Aces were inconsistent with defending him.
And speaking of defending, it really was Sheridan's defense that got this one done.
Sheridan's defense unit is arguably the best they have had. They held the 2nd seed in the playoffs to only 7 points. They have had 4 shutouts in the regular season and held 8 teams to 7 or less points, now 9 teams. The defense has a solid group of seniors. These seniors are Adam Boyle, Owen Loffman, Colin Hill, and Taylor Deem. All 4 of these guys stand 6'2" or taller and weigh 225 pounds or more. The 4 also play offense with Boyle at tight end and the other 3 as offensive linemen, so the Blue Aces really could not get a break from these guys. Loffman specifically had a great night tonight. He had no sacks, but a lot of quarterback pressures that forced Crouch to make mistakes, and altogether, these guys just got the job done. Sheridan will be moving on to the regional finals, where they will play Eastmoor Academy next week, and it will be a battle between a team with big-time offense and a team with big-time defense.
Survive in advance for Sheridan. Rebecca, thank you. A week ago, Tri-Valley's defense blanked Barberton for a round 1 win. The Scotties traveled to Dover tonight, where MVL reporter Nick Ursini saw the Dogs face another undefeated team, the Wadsworth Grizzlies.
Stop me if you've heard this before, Blake. The Tri-Valley Scotties in Week 12. Another team that's familiar with Week 12, the Wadsworth Grizzlies. But the one thing they are not familiar with is each other. Anything to keep yourself warm on a night like tonight includes drills against your own team. First Wadsworth possession, running back Dom Laparo is stuffed on a 4th down, giving the Scotties the ball. So now Scotties possession, Blake Sands goes up the gut 20 yards, setting up a Caden Bay 24-yard field goal, 3-0 Scotties with 7:12 left in the first quarter. Ensuing Grizzlies possession, another 4th down and another Tri-Valley stop. That is their second, and they had 4 stops on 4th down this entire game. The Scotties took the 3-0 lead into halftime, and they got the ball to start off the third, but they could not do anything with it. And this was truly a defensive game, one that the Scotties thrive in. Just think back to last week's game. Finally, the Scotties defense cracked. Wadsworth worked the ball down the field, and Mason McMillan punches it in from 6 yards out. PAT was no good. 6-3 Wadsworth with 49 seconds left in the third quarter. After a Tri-Valley interception on 4th and goal with Trey Schaefer, he finds Tyler Montgomery over the middle, 13-3 Grizzlies with 4:35 left in the fourth. The Scotties force a turnover, but Luke Fargus and Jordan Pantaleo fumble the handoff exchange, and they give it back to Wadsworth, and that's the game. 13-3, Wadsworth advances to the regional final. And you can only ask so much from your defense, and the Scotties answered the call. They held a high-powered Wadsworth offense who scored 42 points a week ago to just 13. With Aiden Fritter sidelined with a broken wrist, the game fell on the shoulders of Luke Fargus, who himself was battling a shoulder injury, and it showed tonight. He was just not himself, and he was constantly holding his shoulder after passing plays. Both teams had their fair share of turnovers, so the opportunities were there for both teams, but as expected, both teams relied heavily on their running game due to the game time temperature being around 30 degrees tonight. Wadsworth running back Dom Laparo had 21 rushes for 97 yards, and the combination of Blake Sands and Jordan Pantaleo had 132 on the ground. Fargus finished his night going 4 of 17 with 68 yards, and Grizzlies quarterback Trey Schaefer finished 19 of 33, 207 yards, and 1 dagger touchdown in the fourth. The Scotties finished their season with a 10-2 record. They win their 8th straight MVL title after a complete coaching change, and exceeded everyone's expectations after last season's state finals run. They lose 18 seniors to graduation, but with a healthy Aiden Fritter returning with 2 years left, I expect the Scotties to be right back here next year. Well, Blake, that's all I've got from Dover. Back to you in that warm studio.
Nick, great work tonight and all season on your coverage of Tri-Valley. Thank you. This season has been a wild one, and it's all been documented on our website. Look us up. WOUB.org/gridiron is the source for written content and an easy place to cast your vote for Gridiron Glory Player of the Year. The voting ends on Tuesday, so there's still plenty of time to make your voice heard. Again, you can find all that good stuff at WOUB.org/gridiron. John Glenn ended its season last week. For those seniors, their time suiting up in the maroon and white is over. MVL reporter Joe Hennessy is here. Joe, it seems unbearable at the moment, but those seniors looking back on their journey might describe it as unbelievable.
Yeah, Blake, you know, the John Glenn Little Muskies fell to the Indian Valley Braves last Saturday. For the seniors, their high school football career was a roller coaster at first, but then they found their way to becoming an NVL contender.
Flashback to the 2015 season. John Glenn ended the year at a dismal 2-8. They averaged 11 points a game and gave up a staggering 30 points. The MVL title and a playoff appearance were light years away for this team. To the 2016 season, the team gets 2 more wins but still couldn't beat the MVL powerhouses in their way. Head coach Matt Edwards knew something needed to change.
It was a struggle. Those first couple of years, that's a difficult situation to try to get kids to buy into what you're telling them. But a credit to our players and our coaches for believing in that. And over the last couple of years, we've kind of seen the payoff.
That payoff was evident in 2017. This team did not just slip into the playoffs. Their offense averaged 39 points a game in their impressive 14-game season. John Glenn deserved to be respected after that kind of year. And this season, John Glenn sat at 1-3 after the first 4 games. So what do? They go on a 6-game win streak to qualify for the playoffs. Oh, and they also beat the big, bad dogs of the MVL, the Tri-Valley Scotties. John Glenn fell to Indian Valley 16-14, but that tough defense only allowed 16 points to a team that averages over 46 points a game. In 2018, the Little Muskies gave up only 9 points a game, which is a 21-point differential from when they were freshmen, and Coach Edwards wants more.
We've got a hungry group, so we're going to have something to prove next year that this is something that this success that we've had the last couple of years is something that we want to try to sustain for as long as we possibly can.
Joseph Clifford, Ben Larson, every senior on that team is going to be missed. They were the underdogs in 2015, but in 2019 they laid the foundation for success for future Little Muskies.
Only time will tell. Great stuff, Joe. Thank you. So you just heard the voice of Coach Edwards. Well, Noah didn't talk to any coaches for this next piece, but he does talk about the great successes of 4 Gridiron coaches this season.
Thanks, Blake. And what success they've had. These 4 coaches have each brought their teams to new heights this year, but now they're in the hunt for some individual success. We've seen some great seasons from many teams in our coverage area, and a lot of that can be attributed to the faces on the sideline. Only the 4 best names made our list of finalists for Gridiron Glory Coach of the Year. In the TVC Ohio, Ryan Adams led Athens to the playoffs thanks to an undefeated conference season in which the Bulldogs didn't win a game by less than 25 points. Kevin Fell, in his first year with Tri-Valley, didn't have any trouble staying competitive, even after all the senior departures from their state finalist team last year. The Scotties rolled on to Week 12, dropping just 1 game along the way. Phil Ferris is another head coach in the midst of a long playoff run. His Tomcats have been dominant all season long in the TVC Hocking, allowing just 5 scores all year. Our final candidate comes from the FAC, Jack O'Rourke, the second-year head coach from Hillsborough. His Indians made the postseason for the first time since 2006, with only 1 loss in the regular season. Your finalists one more time: Fell, Ferris, Adams, O'Rourke. Make sure to tune in for next week's finale show where we will, among other things, give out our Coach of the Year award. Now, one of the coaches you just saw, Phil Ferris, is in action tomorrow night. To see the highlights of his Trimble team in their second-round playoff matchup, as well as Waterford's game tomorrow night, you'll have to go to our YouTube page. Hit up youtube.com/WOUBPBS to see those recaps, as well as previews, power rankings, packages, archived full episodes, and so much more. One more time, that's youtube.com/WOUBPBS. Now, apart from our Coach of the Year finalists, we've got plenty of great coaches all over our coverage area. FAC reporter Will Collins joins me to look at one who had quite a storied career.
Noah, over the last 41 years, Coach Ron Hinton has been a head coach at 3 different schools and has racked up 344 wins. But when it comes to winning, Coach Hinton wins with family.
I have 4 brothers. One never coached with me, but he was always coaching. He'd been at Ohio State, Ohio U, Notre Dame. Very successful high school coach himself. And I have 3 other brothers who coached with me all those years, and they're all volunteers. They're still volunteers today. A big decision can never be made or be said it's written in stone until it went to my parents' dinner table on Sundays. And my dad would approve it, and if we got past that approval, then everything was, then they knew that was good to go. Because my dad was just honest. He just wanted to do well, wanted us to do well, and things. But I always tell them, I say, guys, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I get my butt ripped on Friday nights because of how I could have called, should have called, maybe didn't call. So. My family, my mom's 84 years old, okay, but she's still active. She still comes to my games. She goes to my nephew's games. They're coaching in Circleville, and I think she's been with football since 1965. Okay, she's been involved with Amanda Cleary football since 1965 when I started playing.
Make sure you check out the rest of that story when it's released on our YouTube page. With me now in studio, though, is Coach Ron Hinton himself. Coach, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you. It's a big honor to be here.
So I'll get right into the questions then, Coach. When we talked earlier this week, you told me how much family means to you. And when I interviewed your players back in August at Media Day when you guys came here, they told me how much you've instilled family values in them. So why is being a family so important when you're on a football team?
Well, it's called team. There is no I in team. It's all about unity. It's all about working together. You're only as strong as what your weakest part is. And then that's also building a bond. You have to be able to trust the guy beside you that he's going to do his job. And you want him to do that. You want him to excel at that. So it's all about the same values that you do. It's not a lot of what I teach. I just try and expound upon what the parents have built into our athletes. And then we try and expound upon that, beyond that.
All right, so let's talk some Cavs football then. How much did it mean to you with that family aspect of your team to win the first ever FAC title last season and then trying to defend it again this year?
Well, we always set our goals when we went in there 9 years ago to regain the title. We have one. That's the first one since 1990. Chillicotte's won, so that was a huge thing. We have 1 goal to go. We have not won a playoff game yet. That was that's one of our last goals we want to attain there. But it's important because you work to get to the mountaintop. You strive to get there. All right, and that's the ultimate thing when you get to the peak and you get to plant that flag and say, hey, we were the best. Okay, so it's great to do that and repeating them. But again, greatness is in repeating. you're good when you win, but greatness is in repeating. And that's the thing we've always stressed with our athletes.
All right, so we've got time for one more question. So you mentioned earlier this week as well your younger brother who coaches at Ohio State. Can you tell me a little bit more about how he might consult you as a coach in high school?
Well, you know, I have 4 brothers. My brother Steve is next to me. He's been coaching with me for 30 years. My brother Ken has been almost that long also. My brother Tom, and then my brother Tim, the youngest one. Really, he's been our consultant. He's always been at a college level, collegiate level, or he's been a very successful high school coach himself. So we had a lot of time, conversing back and forth. Most generally, though, he don't call me for recommendations or things to do. I have to call him and ask him those questions. He never calls me and asks me that, you know. But you know, it's been a great relationship. It's been very special. I've been very fortunate, very lucky to have been in these situations and to have a family like I have to work with.
Well, that's all the time we have tonight, Coach. Once again, thank you for joining us, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show to talk about family values in Cavs football. Noah?
Thanks, Will. Playoff traditions are all over the place, but one that's held consistent in Gloucester is the Mohawk Mafia. That's our tweet of the week. Todd Fouts and Garrett Richards both sent in an intimidating team portrait of the Trimble Tomcats, continuing their postseason journey with a little bit less hair than they had before. Gentlemen, thanks for the tweet. Elsewhere in the TVC, have you heard who led the Ohio in rushing for the 2018 season? Not Keegan Wilburn, nor Evan Adams, not even Zach Bartram. He just transferred in this year from Central Florida and didn't even play his junior year of football. TVC Ohio reporter Ethan Sands has the story.
Let me introduce you to Cade Simner, the 5'7" senior from the Sunshine State to the cold-winded Ohio, ended up taking the league by storm. He moved to Vinton County in late April, just in time for his senior season.
Drive. It wasn't bad. It was more like a social thing. And then once I met all the guys, it kind of just transferred onto the football field, and it was easy to adjust.
This isn't a flashy kid. He's a strictly business kind of player.
He's a very low-key, well-liked average guy, so he fitted well.
The Vikings took Simner in as one of their own, and he's seen the love that Ohio high school teams have for their players.
Everything, like, it's such a close community and everything, and everyone's so kind, and it just feels good to have everyone behind you and supporting you.
There's one part of playing at Vinton County that Simner will never forget.
Like, running out of the tunnel and everything and hearing all the fans screaming, and it's nice. It definitely pumps you up on Fridays.
Football in Southeast Ohio was like nothing he had seen before.
I wouldn't say it was as good as it is here.
He might have only been a Viking for a year, but it's a year fans will never forget.
Yeah, they'll never forget it because he broke their school's single-season rushing record this year. He made the most of his time in Ohio high school football. Now, another Ohio team that's not in contention anymore is Athens, but they had their first playoff berth since 2014 and ran the table in conference. Reporter Thomas Garvrick breaks down the film to see how Clay Davis led the Bulldogs to victory this season.
I take you to Athens' game against Vinton County. What separates you from good to great is your eyes. And look where Clay's eyes are looking. Logan Maxfield on the left far side running a slant. All 3 Viking defenders think Davis is going to Maxfield, but that allows one-on-one separation with Nate Trainer up top on the wheel route. Perfect throw, easy money, but I want to go back to the throw itself. Trainer's at the 5-yard line, but Davis has the ability to throw a dart about 10 yards where he knows Trainer's going to be, and so that allows the Bulldogs to take advantage of the matchup in the slot. Next play now, Maxfield, the one circled in the slot. This throw shows off Clay's accuracy. Defense bites on the play-action fake, and this is just target practice for Davis. Tight window, it doesn't matter. Perfect ball for a big game. And I want to go back and look at the play action. High IQ here by Davis to see the corner in the slot, bites on the fake, so Davis is able to identify the matchup he wants. But again, little space for error. This is a collegiate throw he makes, throwing it into traffic. 3 Viking defenders, but Davis shows off the accuracy. Sensational grab, one of the best duos from this year. Davis's high IQ and accuracy is why he is able to separate himself from the rest in our coverage.
Clay Davis is in contention for Player of the Year this season, but Blake now has the story of the Player of the Year from our very first season.
Yeah, no, while Davis is campaigning for the award, Justin Roush is looking back on 20 years since he won it in 1999. Earlier this season, I met with Roush and his coach, Mike Chansey, to reminisce on their glory days at Meg's.
So now we have some special guests in studio.
Mike Chansey, 19 years head coach at Meigs, and Justin Roush, very first player of the year for our program, graduate of Meigs in 2000, top 5 record holder in rushing yards in the state. I wanted to ask you about the Player of the Year award.
When I won that, people voted for me. You know, it wasn't just like coaches, it was your community. So it gave me a lot of pride that people watched me, people knew who I was, and you know, it just gave a lot of gratification to me, but also for people to finally be able to see who we were.
What do you think kind of values that football provides to show young men life after football?
You learn how to put the team's needs and wants in front of your own. That togetherness that you get out of football, that's what kept me in it.
You spend your whole life dreaming about breaking all these records, but when you're 20 years removed, you're like, what's the record? I'd rather go back and spend another moment, you know, hearing him give a pep talk or hearing your teammates clap for you.
I don't know if we flash this to the camera. I don't know if you want to show the, if you want to show the award there that you won.
I sure will. 20 years ago, I sat in the studio.
It's a historic year.
Yes, amen.
A little faded, but so am I.
Looks good. We like it authentic. Well, thank you guys both very much.
Thank you.
Again, Mike Chansey, Justin Roush, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, thank you very much to those two for coming in the studio and talking to me. It was a great conversation. You can see the whole conversation on our YouTube page. That'll go up shortly after the show this weekend. And I want to remind you to vote for Player of the Year this year. You can go on our website, and it'll be right on the right side. Go ahead and vote on that until November 13th. And normally we use Snapchat to showcase games we go to on Friday nights. Well, now the games are scarce, and we're using it a little bit differently. Each Player of the Year candidate is coming into this very studio for interviews with our doc team. Check out the behind-the-scenes looks at those POY Q&A sessions on our Snapchat, and that's at Gridiron Glory on Snapchat. So we already heard about 2 of our team's playoff fates tonight, but we have 2 more games to go to tomorrow. TVC Hocking reporters Sam Wiesnith and T. Willis are in studio with their thoughts on what we should expect tomorrow night.
That's right. We have 2 Hocking teams left in the playoffs, but I'm especially excited to see what the Tomcats can make happen tomorrow night.
Sam, playoffs are my favorite time of year, and I'm looking forward to Waterford's semifinal matchup against Lucas.
So let's roll right on into the matchup, starting with Sam. Do you think those Tomcats will continue their dominance tomorrow night?
Blake, these Tomcats have momentum on their side after shutting out their 8th team of the season last week, but I have a feeling tomorrow night is going to be a bit more challenging for them. Trimble's taking on Harvest Prep at Logan. The Warriors are undefeated this season, and Trimble has 1 close loss from a non-conference game.
Now, I know it's hard to compare these 2 teams, but who seems to have the upper hand in this one?
It is tough, but last week Trimble beat Fisher Catholic in the first round of playoffs 37-0. During the regular season, Harvest Prep took on the Irish and only beat them by 12 points. Both of these teams had their fair share of shutouts this season. The Warriors have 5, and like I said earlier, Trimble's at 8. Trimble on average gives up 2 less points per game than the Warriors and have scored 9 more points per game.
So regardless of their defensive prowess this year, it's going to be a challenge for Trimble. And speaking of challenges, Waterford has their work cut out for them against the top-seeded Lucas Cubs Saturday night. T, how do you think the Wildcats can pull off an upset tomorrow?
Just as they have all season, the Wildcats will rely heavily on their offense to carry the load. Last week, Peyton Stevens put on a clinic against Bern Union. The quarterback threw 3 touchdown passes and had 2 rushing touchdowns of his own. Stevens' favorite target is George Pantelitis. The receiver has 29 receptions and 6 touchdowns this season. And we can't forget about Waterford's all-time rushing leader, Braden Belleville. The senior had 20 carries for 117 yards last week, and he'll need to have a game just as good, if not better, this Saturday. While both teams have 9-2 records, Lucas is currently on a 6-game winning streak, and last week the Cubs defeated the River Pilots 42-0. An upset is possible for the Wildcats, but it won't be easy by any means.
Yeah, you're saying some good stuff. From what you're saying, it looks like we'll see some pretty good matchups for both Hocking teams on Saturday. So who do you guys think will make it further in the playoffs? I got to ask.
Well, that's an easy one. Trimble's definitely going to make it further in the playoffs. Last season, Waterford couldn't make it past the first round, and now in the second round this season, they're taking on Lucas, who beat Trimble last year. And from what we've seen this season, Trimble can outperform Waterford.
That may be true, but like you said, Trimble was beat in the second round last year, and this year they're up against Harvest Prep, who's undefeated. Also keep in mind that Waterford was the only team in the Hocking who could put up a fight against the Tomcats.
Well, since you brought that up, let's say both of these Hocking teams win on Saturday. Then they would face off against each other next week in the regional final. Would things be different this time around, the next time these 2 teams meet up again?
Blake, if I was a betting man, I'd put my money on Waterford. Before this season, Trimble's last victory against Waterford was in 2015. The Wildcat seniors have experience under their belt when it comes to taking down Tomcats.
T, it's nice to look back on a team's history, but we can't dwell on the past. We're talking about how these teams can perform in 2018. Waterford's offense doesn't stand a chance against Trimble's defense. The Tomcats give up less than 4 points per game, and they've shut out 8 teams this season, with one of them being in the playoffs.
You're right, they did have 8 shutouts, but Waterford wasn't one of them. History has a habit of repeating itself, and I wouldn't underestimate the Wildcats.
Well, I've got to cut you guys off there, but you're both bringing up some really good points. If these two teams do happen to face off in the regional finals next week, we'll certainly be in for a treat. But they both have to make it through round 2 first. Sam and T, thank you very much. Now, getting to week 12 is a big deal. Getting to week 13 would be even better.
Tri-Valley was this close to getting there, and Sheridan has a shot at this week's at a regional title this year. Let's check out the updated brackets. Kevin Fell's first season at Tri-Valley comes to a close after 12 hard-fought weeks. The defense did its part, holding the Grizzlies to 13 points, but that offense struggled.
Yeah, 3 points very rarely gets the job done against an undefeated team. Blake Slands led the Scotty backfield with 77 total yards, and that kind of sums it up for you.
No reason for Tri-Valley to hang their heads, though. Yet another trip to the postseason and their 8th straight conference championship.
But for the rivals Sheridan, the storied season continues. The Generals took care of business against second-seeded Granville tonight to ensure their shot at a regional title.
Ethan Heller threw for a modest 54 yards, but the Generals kept pounding for 228 total yards while holding the Blue Aces to only 66, and they're moving on to Week 13.
Well, 2 more of our teams can make it there, and they play tomorrow night.
Yeah, we just talked about Trimble and Waterford, so let's take one last look at their Saturday matchups. Trimble has quite the test on its hands with Harvest Prep, who's made the playoffs 5 straight times.
And in that span, the Warriors have won 5 playoff games. This year, they're 11-0, and they have 4 running backs with over 600 yards on the season.
But they're going against that tenacious Tomcat defense that's posted 5 straight shutouts and an insane 8 total shutouts.
The Waterford Wildcats are also continuing their strong season into Week 12. They'll face Lucas in Coshocton on Saturday night.
Lucas is also on its 5th straight playoff appearance. Like all 4 of these teams, the Cubs are coming in with a run-heavy game script.
Lucas running back Jeb Grover had 209 yards last week on 5 carries, and 4 of which went for touchdowns. So as well as Waterford runs it, they're going to have to stop the run to win tomorrow night. Well, folks, we have only 1 more week left in Season 20. Can you even believe it? We hope you'll join us next week for our finale show, and that one's an hour long. Then we're going to reveal our Coach of the Year, Player of the Year, so make sure you vote on that on our website. And until then, we're going to leave you with some clips of those Player of the Year candidates. Until next week, remember there's nothing better than Friday nights and Gridiron Glory.